Spill Sports Show. Matt Reynoldson.
I've always been told I have the face for radio, and now I'm making it happen.
David Eickholt.
It's utter blasphemy. It blows my mind.
Scott Ayers.
The next time they make the playoffs, I'll be running for president.
Kick off your weekend with hard-hitting sports talk every Friday afternoon from 1 to 3 on KRNU2. You're kicking off the weekend with the Spill Sports Show. Listen every Friday on KRNU2 or 24/7 on thespillkrnu.wordpress.com.
We are talking about people that play games for money.
I love to bring a Jersey Shore type feel.
That makes me angry. That makes me sad. That gets me fired up.
Here's your hosts, Matt Reynoldson, David Eickholt, and Scott Ayers.
Did that, put him in the aisle. Johnny the Jet Rogers just tore them loose from their shoes.
You believe in miracles? Yes! Comes to LeBron. He takes a fadeaway for the win. He knocked it down!
There goes Davis. Oh, my God! Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
You can't believe what just happened. What a time to be alive!
Hit me with the horn, 20. Yeah! Oh! Here we go now! 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 Check it out!
Welcome in. You're listening to the Spill Sports Show. We are live worldwide on KRNU2. From Studio A in Andersen Hall on the University of Nebraska campus, we're coming at you with live sports talk for the next 2 hours. We are the royalty of radio roundtables. Alongside David Eickholt and Scott Ayers, I'm Matt Reynoldson, and we're talking about people that play games for money. We've got a super lineup for you coming today. David, what's coming up in hour one?
Well, we're going to reevaluate the season for Nebraska basketball after another heartbreaking loss. What are the realistic expectations for the rest of the season? We'll also recap a busy signing day, talk Super Bowl halftime shows in the pop culture spill, and our feature of the week, Jordan Stevenson's tweet of the week. Scotty, what we got for hour two?
We have a full hour of Super Bowl preview. We'll give you our analysts and bring in 93.7 The Ticket's Connor Happer to talk matchup details. We'll give you our predictions at the end of the show, and we'll close with the final rundown. But first, Nebraska ball is once again close, but no cigar.
Again, this team refuses to get out of their own way when it matters the most. The team held a late lead, forced plenty of Maryland turnovers, and just couldn't capitalize. Guys, what does this team need to get over the hump?
Honestly, they just need more talent at the end of the day. This is a young Nebraska basketball team. Not a lot of people expected them to be where they are at 12-11. Quite frankly, I'm happy that they even have a winning record right now. They don't have enough in them to be a great basketball team this season. That's just who they are. They're 4-6 in conference now, 12-11 overall. This is just a Nebraska ball team that I think people are excited because they won a few in a row. They beat Michigan State, but at the end of the day, they just don't have enough talent.
Not right now. It just comes down to they need to develop. I think Jack McVay needs to start playing his potential because we've seen flashes of him just looking like a great outside shooter, a decent defender, and can guard the wings. But he hasn't really come into his own. We still don't have a dominant post presence, but that's something that's not really an easy fix. Although, big shout out to Jacobson because I thought he played outstanding against Maryland, especially for, an NBA center like, Diamond Stone. They have Robert Carter, who's a great four. But you know what? We just gotta get more talent. We need to be able to shoot the ball better because you're not going to win many games when you're shooting 31.8%. We forced a lot of turnovers, and it was great because they were forced turnovers. It wasn't Maryland's unforced. But at the end of the day, we need to convert. We just got to convert better. But Maryland, they had great transition defense, which stopped a lot of Nebraska's fast breaks. But we we have a long way to go. We just got to be patient with this team because we do have the talent, but now it's just how can we get the best out of each individual player? We need to define this team's identity and really just start with that. And once we do that and just work our way up, that's when the winnings get come. That's when we're going to have a chance against a Maryland or Michigan State. I mean, obviously beat Michigan State, but that was a very well put together overall game. I just think we need to reevaluate ourselves and build ourselves an identity.
You know what, David? It's this patience thing. We've been waiting too long for this. I've been a Nebraska ball fan my whole life. My dad's been a Nebraska ball fan his whole life, and he told me after the Indiana game this year, I've just been waiting 40 years for something to happen, and it just never happens. It never comes to fruition. This team has the talent, but time and time again, they won't get out of their own way. I'm not here to feed you optimism. I'm here to feed you the truth. Look, they put together a fantastic game plan to beat Maryland. Played great defense for most of the game. They even held a late lead, and once again, they could not capitalize. They've lost their edge at home. They don't have that killer instinct that they did even just 2 years ago. At the opening of Pinnacle Bank Arena, went 15-1 at home, and it seemed like whenever they held that lead, they had those comebacks. Whenever they held that lead, they held on to it. They never let that go. They never got soft on us like they did in this game. The crowd was behind them. The students showed up and showed out for this Maryland game, and the guys couldn't capitalize on a 3-point lead, on closing the gap to 2 under the 4-minute mark. It was inexcusable. It was just inexcusable to not be able to capitalize on this win. This team has a lack of organization. Tim Miles needs to figure out the player personnel. Yep. Jake Hammond had a horrible game and played way too many minutes. Jack McVay didn't get enough of a chance, but obviously didn't have a great game. Yep. Ed Morrow, I understand he's dealing with a plantar fasciitis, but still, he could have thrown his body around in there and gotten a few more rebounds than Hammond did, just throwing himself around in there. Hammond's flailing around. Hammond's creating stupid fouls. And this team, that's not what this team needs right now.
Hammond had 3 fouls, and he didn't grab a rebound in 7 minutes of play.
This team needs that post presence, which Michael Jacobson's being, but this team needs better instinct. This team has the talent. We've seen it. This team out-talented Michigan State at Michigan State. This team out-talented a lot of Big Ten teams so far, and a lot of teams on their schedule, including top 25 Miami here at home. They just don't have the killer instinct that they had 2 years ago. Whether that's a lack of vocal assistant coaches, I don't know. But they need to figure it out because I'm sick of waiting around as a diehard Nebraska ball fan.
And there's 2 things that come to mind. Is one, we're not more talented than Michigan State. I mean, we're not. They have Denzel Valentine, Bryn Forbes, Matt Costello is playing like an all Big Ten.
What I'm saying, they looked more talented in that game.
Okay,
Siobhan Shields played
I thought you
way
said
above
overall.
Siobhan Shields played way above his potential in that game.
Yep.
And they looked more talented.
Another big problem I'm seeing over the last couple of years is Siobhan Shields is the new Taryn Petaway. He went, if you look at the stats, 4 of 17, 0 for 3 from the 3-point line. I thought he played a bad game. I'm so sick of Siobhan Shields thinking he's a shooter. He's not a shooter. He's a drive guy who should be creating plays and looking to get the ball to our shooters, like Andrew White, like Jack McVay when he's hot, Glenn Watson. Even Michael Jacobson's been proven to hit more of an a jump shot than Siobhan Shields. I don't have any faith. Every time he shoots the jump shot, I cringe. I just don't like it. This team just has a lot he just needs to go. The team's going to be better once Siobhan Shields is going, and I understand what you're saying. I'm sick of waiting for this team to blossom, but at the end of the day, if they don't really start figuring out something, and if they have this problem again next year, I gotta tell you what, I really got to start questioning Miles' job security, despite his recruiting.
And Scotty, you mentioned to me that you don't think Siobhan Shields is a bad shooter. You just see that lack of confidence when he takes a 3, when he decides to pull up on a drive before a drive. You want him to have that confidence because he's a good enough player to hit those shots, but he's just not doing it. What do you think about that?
You lose confidence too every time you miss a shot, but shooters, kind of like in the NFL, cornerbacks, after a bad play, you just got to forget about it. And I think for this team, it looms over them, these losses. And this is a young team. You're looking at 3 juniors and a whole lot of freshmen. Siobhan Shields and Benny Parker being the only seniors on this team. And it comes to leadership. How good is Siobhan Shields and Benny Parker's leadership? Is it existent at all? And you know what? We're going to see, guys, because the ISO offense just is not what Nebraska should be running. They are not the Cleveland Cavaliers. They are a mediocre Big Ten basketball team. You have to run solid plays. Get Andrew White III open for three. Get Jack McVay open for three. Get Glenn Watson those elbow jump shots that he's so great at. That's what Nebraska should be doing, not the ISO offense. They can't run that NBA-style offense.
Yeah, agreed. And if you look at the offense that Nebraska runs, even look at the Maryland game and look at the games they struggled in where they go stagnant. The offense runs sideways. There's nobody cutting from baseline to baseline. There's no double screen. There's no high-low screen. There's a very, very poor pick-and-roll game. There's just a lack of design plays, and I've touched on this last couple weeks. Andrew White is a good shooter, but he cannot create his own shot as well as he thinks he can. We need to do double screens, again, high-low. Make plays for Andrew White for him to succeed. Don't let him do it himself. And I think that's what we need to start doing. We need more of an offensive structure, and we need to be better in transition. Because I think we ended up with 6 points off turnovers. Maryland had 18 turnovers, and a lot of them were forced, and a lot of them were fast break. We need to be able to convert on that.
Let me throw this stat at you. Maryland had 13 blocks.
Yeah.
Because guys want to run into the middle on their own, coming off a high ball screen or just trying to create by themselves, going into guys like Diamond Stone, who had 8 blocks. He's 6'11". Maryland has tall guys that can block your shot, and if you try and go ISO against them, they have nothing else to focus on. If you're gonna go ISO, have somebody back cut. It's not the hardest thing in the world. It's like earlier this year when they couldn't figure out how to break a press. Thank God they finally figured that out. But you have to back cut when somebody's running an ISO to the basket. If Ty Webster, I see Ty Webster do it time and time again. He goes in the lane, looks for somebody, and nobody's there. So he has to go up and get swatted. Yeah. And then we lose the ball. It's another turnover right there because they're taller than us. They can block us. We can't out-jump a lot of teams because we don't have – I mean, they have good athletes on this team, but we don't have the athletes that some of these teams do, and we certainly don't have the vertical athletes that some of these teams do.
And I think that just comes down to the talent thing I was talking about earlier. Nebraska ball, you know what? Nebraska has great fans, and Tim Miles is a stand-up guy, but at the end of the day, Nebraska still isn't the recruiting capital of the world, especially for basketball. Top recruits aren't looking at Nebraska and are saying, you know what, I want to play for a program that's never won a national title, that's, rarely ever made it to the NCAA tournament. Very few players do that. And so Nebraska just has to play with what they've got. And, right now that's Jack McVay and Siobhan Shields, and that's why we're seeing Nebraska recruit outside the country, because those are the players that they can get. But right now, Nebraska's not going to be able to recruit those top-end athletes that other Big Ten teams have, just because Nebraska doesn't have any history, and they really haven't proven why they deserve those big recruits.
Yeah, exactly. I think you hit the nail right on the head there. At the end of the day, though, I'm really starting to question Tim Miles' talent development, because there's not many players I can look at over his tenure and be like, oh, he got so much better here. I see players digress. Like, they're not executing the way they could be, and they're not reaching their potential. And I think at the end of the day, you're right. We just need to work harder. We need to work with what we've got, make the NCAA tournament with what we've got, because when we do that, that opens recruiting doors for more top 100 guys, players outside the country who are 4 stars that could be great NBA prospects potentially. But at the end of the day, right now we need better coaching. We need better execution. Tim Miles needs to step up. I think the first step to that is cut the halftime tweeting crap. Focus on building an offense and developing this in the players, and just cut the little things out. I think you need a whole revamp right now if Miles wants to save. Otherwise, I can see him getting fired in mid-season next year.
I don't think so, and I think he has gotten too many good recruits to let go of him anytime in the next 3 years, no matter what the results are. But I think over an extended period of time, you have players that have developed really well. Siobhan Shields has developed really well. He's being asked to do too much in the wrong system. Benny Parker has developed amazingly well for a 5'9" guard who probably he doesn't have the physical stature to be playing college basketball, yet he's doing it pretty well. He's become a good shooter. He's become I still don't think he necessarily deserves to start, but he's become a staple for this team, and that's a testament to the development of this staff. But this team or this staff needs to develop players quicker, needs to let players learn their roles before they're fully developed within the system. This was a gripe we always had with Bo Pelini, who was the football coach here. He didn't develop the players right away. He waited until they grew into his system, which was a complicated two-gap defensive scheme. Hard to learn even for the best NFL players. Miles is doing the same type of thing. Obviously not running that as complicated a scheme, but not developing the players where they need to develop. Obviously Jacobson's done really well. Glenn Watson and Ed Morrow have had pretty good moments, but some of these top recruits, a lot of the top 100 recruits, and Watson and Morrow are top 100 recruits. They can come in and play right away and do well right away. It's not about the system always. Often, it's just about how quickly you can develop a player to be comfortable within a game.
The problem is I don't see a system. It makes me question it. And, okay, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think we're crap at talent development. I've not seen players really excel or reach their potential. Shields, to me, again, I cringe every time he takes a jump shot. I don't trust it, and I don't think he should either. He should not be the one leading this team. Andrew White should be leading this team. I don't even think that should be a question. Siobhan Shields isn't a leader. I think he's building himself up to try to make himself an NBA prospect. He's doing, again, the Taron Petaway syndrome. I think Benny Parker's the closest thing we have to a leader right now. But I think we're lacking true leadership. I think we're lacking talent development. And I think we're lacking an actual game plan. Because I can't see what we're doing, quite frankly.
And Matt, I think you actually hit it on the head with saying Siobhan Shields is doing too much in terms of it's a coaching decision. Siobhan Shields, I think, came into this program never thinking he'd be the number one guy. He came in thinking he'd be a 2-3 scorer because when he is the second or third scorer, he's very good at it. He's very talented. But the problem is Nebraska's now leaning on him to take all the big shots, to take all the late second shots, and that's just not his game style or who he is. Siobhan Shields is a pretty good shooter. He just has not been shooting the ball well. If you watch that Michigan State game, he was unconscious. He played a great game. However, he's been cold these past few games. I get it. That's what happens when you have to take the workload and you're not the most talented guy in the world. Other guys are going to have to step up on this team because right now it's just a crapshoot on offense, and it's hard to watch. In all honesty, the bigs, they're not great. It's easy to say. However, it's a young team. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 freshmen on this team. There's 14 names on this roster, so not everyone's playing, but to have 9 guys only in their freshman year, the future can still be bright for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. It's just how these players can develop in these next few seasons.
And, I like your point about Siobhan Shields. He was never meant to be a number one guy. I do think he is trying to run too much of the offense, and I think Tim Miles is trying to run too much of the offense through him. He's good with those mid-range spot-up shots. He's good with pulling up off the dribble a lot of times. Those mid-range shots are his money game. Those mid-range shots and occasionally driving to the basket, but driving to the basket when it's open, not when it's just an ISO. And I think that's what he's trying to do too much. I think he's not confident with his outside shot. That's why I don't think he should shoot them. And he's a good mid-range shooter. He's a Dirk-type mid-range shooter, but you don't see Dirk shoot a lot of threes. And I'm not comparing Siobhan Shields to Dirk Nowitzki. I'm just saying they have a very comparable mid-range game. So I think that's what Siobhan Shields should make his money on, that mid-range game, because it's producing results, and it produced results in games like Michigan State and a lot of good non-conference performances.
And my thing is, I'm not trying to sound like I'm just sitting here and bashing Shields, because obviously he's still a huge part of this team. But the problem is I don't see the offense Miles trying to run, and I'm criticizing Miles for trying to make Siobhan Shields into something he's not. Are we all in consensus here that Andrew White should be the number one scoring option?
Yeah, and he is. He is leading the team in scoring.
He is, but he was brought into Kansas as a shooter, not as a do-everything guy. I think he can develop into that for Nebraska, but he's not naturally that. So I think he needs to develop into that and really build his confidence as a driving scorer, a transition scorer, because sometimes you see him, especially Wednesday night, you see him lagging on transition, and that is just so frustrating because Nebraska left a lot of transition points on the floor.
If we convert even a third of those opportunities or even half those opportunities, we win the game.
Win the game.
We win the game. But, I mean, again, I don't want to sound like it's not all Nebraska's fault because Maryland did have outstanding transition defense because you saw right when 3 of Nebraska's players would cross half court, all 5 of Maryland's guys are already back and they have their defense set up. So that's credit hustle to them. But we need Andrew White. I'm interested to see how he does next year. I know we don't want to talk about next year. We're tired of waiting and all this stuff. I'm excited to see, can he become ISO? Can he make his own shots? But until he can learn how to do that, we need to run more plays for him. Again, double screens. We need to let him be the baseline to baseline guy. I think Peter Jock and Andrew White have a very, very similar playing style. They can run the baseline and they can put up and they can make shots. They both get buckets. And I think if Miles can look at Peter Jock, how he runs in the Iowa offense, I think that could be a good option for what Andrew White could be, and even how he is now in terms of development with this offense.
Let's take a look at the team as a whole. Any chance this team still makes the NCAA tournament, or is it NIT or bust?
I think it's NIT or bust because we're not going to win out. I don't see how we really can.
And I think even if Nebraska wins out, they'll have to have a very impressive showing in the Big Ten tournament. If they win the Big Ten tournament, awesome. NCAA tournament, here we come. I don't really think that's going to happen for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. I think they just got to have a good end of the season and try to make that NIT tournament.
I think if Nebraska wins out, I think they definitely have a good argument because they would have that win at a really, really good Indiana team.
That's true. That's true.
But it's very, very unrealistic to see this team winning out, and I think they should hope for an NIT bid, but they're not close enough to the bubble right now to even be looking at an NIT bid.
Yeah.
And yes, that should be their goal. Yes, that'll probably be where they end up at the end of the season. But CBI looks a little bit more likely right now, and we'll see where this team ends up.
Just have a good postseason showing and just get the young players some confidence built, something to go off of, because that can play huge in the next year.
Exactly. And this team's in a lot. We do know this team's in a lot better place than last year's team was at this same point. Well, Nebraska ball tips off against Rutgers tomorrow at 1 p.m. from Pinnacle Bank Arena, the same building that hosted a bevy of recruits just a couple weekends ago. Speaking of recruits, nearly every team in the country has a new class signed and ready to go. We'll talk about the biggest winners and losers of Wednesday's signing day after the break. Stay with us. This is the Spill Sports Show.
Bring 'em out, bring 'em out, bring 'em out, bring 'em out. It's hard to yell when the barrel's in your mouth. Come on.
You're listening to the Spill Sports Show on KRNU2.
Just gotta do what I gotta do, and when I gotta do it, So basically, just doing what I gotta do every time I step on the court to do what I gotta do.
Now, live from Andersen Hall on the UNL campus, here's Matt Reynoldson, David Eickholt, and Scott Ayers.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Spill Sports Show live and worldwide on KRNU2. From paintball spelling to skydiving, every college football recruit wants their announcement to be special. But let's talk about how Nebraska commit and 4-star athlete Lamar Jackson announced his. Scotty, I know you had some thoughts on this video. What'd you like about it?
Honestly, I had a lot of fun with this video. He was being chased by people on the hoverboards or whatever you call them. He ran around. Surprisingly, they caught up to him. I don't know how. He's in the weight room. He's lifting weights left and right. He's getting bigger and bigger. Next thing you know, he's picking up a kid. Is it his kid? Is it his sister? I have no idea. But at the end of the day, it was a beautiful video, and he put on that black hat with a big old red end and finished with a Go Big Red.
GBR.
I'll tell you what, I did end up rewatching the video, and I really did like it. I think it was a little bit overdone but that's not his fault. He's a good. I've heard he's a really good kid. I did hear it was his sister. And multiple people. I thought it was his kid too.
I thought it was his kid. Yep.
I think I did some research. I think it was his girlfriend's niece.
Oh, okay. I read like multiple people. But then again, they were just a anonymous egg Twitter user, so I probably shouldn't use that as a validated source.
I mean, that's what I use for my sources. So.
But I mean, I thought it was really cool. I thought, again, I'm not really the big whole like Hollywood type announcement, but I'll tell you what, nobody liked it except Nebraska fans, because if I was on one of the teams that he didn't end up picking, I'm like, oh, thanks for refusing my team on a national public stage and making a big show of, oh, I'm not choosing your school. No, you're not good enough. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think it was a it was a really well-done video, and it's a huge get for Nebraska.
You know, the thing is, Nebraska's hat has been on the table, nationally televised. I mean, not as much as you might expect for a program like Nebraska, but it's been on the nationally televised table for recruits so many times and not been picked up and put on his head. But then Lamar Jackson takes the hat off of somebody else, puts it on his head, says "Go Big Red" to end the video. And that was cool. It was cool to see a very public proclamation of "I'm going to Nebraska." Great publicity for the program, and really, really fun to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was tons of fun in terms of, is it kind of overdone nowadays? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I like how, you know, you can give these kids a debut, let them put on a hat or whatever, but I think things are getting blown out of proportion. I know one kid committed to UCLA by playing paintball or whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the full video because I was just like, this is ridiculous, and just pick your school.
I mean it's okay to go out a little bit, you know, out of the box, but I don't want to sit around for watching a 4-minute video to see where you end up going to school. Yeah. I'm a huge fan. I love the actual press conferences,
yes,
and they have 3 or 4 hats, and the kid just, you get to see him put on the hat, and then you get to see the genuine look on his face about, oh my gosh, I'm actually committed. And it's really cool to see that. I'm pretty old-fashioned in recruiting. I think that's the best way to do it. I mean, it's really fun to see these guys sometimes, because I can't remember who it was, but somebody skydived out, and then his parachute or whatever was the school he was going to. It was something crazy like that. I mean, those are cool every once in a while, but I love watching. The press conferences never get old for me to watch, and I love seeing just the look on the kid's face and all of his family around him.
Forum topic for the Spill Sports Show. If you were a high school athlete and you wanted to make a video or make a big spectacle of your decision, what would you do, David?
That's really, really tough. I'll tell you what, just fit the stereotype. If I ended up going to, let's say I went to the University of Iowa, I would make it have a cornfield, and have it say just in corn, have it say David to Iowa. And just totally just people can make fun of the whole corn stereotype of Iowa, and I think that'd be hilarious.
Scotty?
I would honestly just do something similar to LeBron James, an hour special. I'd probably do it for the Make-A-Wish Foundation because they're just doing great things out there, and I'd probably commit to, you know, Alabama, an SEC school, because I've got a great throwing arm. I can throw a football about 75 yards.
You throw it over the mountain over there? Throw a football a quarter mile?
Absolutely.
Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah.
You know, I don't really want to make this too big of a spectacle, and so I would befriend a famous rapper, maybe Drake, and go on stage with him, and we'll announce it together. We'll announce it together. Drake's wearing my jersey. Drake's wearing my jersey to my school. Drake's coming on the Matt Reynoldson bandwagon. This is happening. All right, back to signing day. Who won signing day? Because we know who has the best recruiting classes overall, but who gained the most ground on signing day, do you think?
You look at a team like Texas, a team who went 5-7 last year. They finished 10th in the country, according to ESPN Insider. They jumped 22 places from where they initially were. Charlie Strong is a great coach, I think. He did a great job at Louisville, and he's finally trying to turn around Texas. We're going to see if this recruiting class can help them out, because Texas has been down in the dumps for quite some time, but this recruiting class could really bolster this football team.
And I 100% agree. I think Texas is going to be a winning football team next year. I think they win. I'm going to say 9 games this early. I also think I'm making a little bit under the radar that not a lot of people have been talking about. I think LSU really won signing day, and I think because of the class they got, they're my favorites going in next year, especially with Leonard Fournette coming back and all the big-time superstars they got there. So many 4-star commits. I mean, they got 19 4-star commits. They don't have any 5-star.
They need a quarterback first.
Not when you got Leonard Fournette and a heck of a defense. I trust Fournette to carry that team until they maybe play Alabama, but that will be a different story when that time comes. But I think LSU really won it. They fit all their needs. They got great cornerbacks coming in. They got great defensive tackle. And Leonard Fournette. So,
I think I'm going to go up north a little bit for this one. I think Michigan really won signing day. It seemed like every time I turned on the television, another recruit was putting on the Michigan hat, including number 1 overall recruit, defensive tackle Rashawn Gary. Yeah. He spurned a bunch of other great programs for Michigan. And I think this really speaks to Harbaugh's recruiting tactics and what Harbaugh is able to do in just his second year. They were the 40th ranked recruiting class in the nation last year, and they jumped all the way up to number 6, right neck and neck with rival Ohio State. Harbaugh's building something at Michigan. You saw their rally Wednesday after signing day. They had big names like Tom Brady, Desmond Howard, Lou Holtz there. Everybody just excited about the new culture of Michigan football, and I think Harbaugh's really instilling that there, and I think he's made the recruits believe that. I think recruits just enjoy climbing trees with Jim Harbaugh. Let me ask you this about
Netflix and chilling.
Netflix and chilling with Jim Harbaugh. Yikes. Let me ask you this: are Jim Harbaugh's recruiting tactics imitatable, or are they unique to Jim Harbaugh?
I think they're unique to Jim Harbaugh, and I simply say this because Jim Harbaugh is just a character that we have not seen from college coaches in quite some time, if ever. I can't see, I hate to bring up Iowa again, but I can't see like a Kirk Ferentz ever doing something like that. I can't see Nick Saban doing something like that. I can't see any of these classic older generation coaches, even new generation coaches I feel like would have some sort of problem in terms of they want to keep it professional, like really professional. But Jim Harbaugh is just you know what? You don't have to like Michigan. You don't have to like him. He's an outstanding character, and I quite frankly love all the coverage he's getting. I think it's very entertaining, and it's fun to hear about, and it's fun to report on.
Yeah, it definitely gives Harbaugh an edge, in all honesty, because these are high school kids. These are guys who are around my age. I'm a freshman in college, 19 years of age, if anyone's listening. And more importantly, these kids are young. They're youthful. And that's what Harbaugh brings to the table. He brings this fun, energetic youthfulness that these kids can relate to, that they can have fun with. And I think that's why you see Michigan do so well in recruiting this year, is because these kids are like, all right, this coach is live, he's fun to be around and all that.
Jim Harbaugh is just so street smart, and he's so in tune with the high school generation, I feel like, because he got Migos to come in to their signing day special. And I guarantee you, a lot of his athletes and a lot of athletes in high school now, they bump Migos to get pumped up for game days and all that. And I think that was just a great small little move he did to make their signing day even bigger.
To clarify for the listeners, that's not popular Lincoln food late night drunk food chain Amigos. That's Migos, the rapper.
But I'll tell you what, I think I'm going to switch it really quick. I think Ohio State had a really, really great recruiting class as well. And you got to start with Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa is the number 1 defensive end coming out of this class. He is 6'3", 250 pounds. As you know, he is quick off the line, got some great power moves, and honestly, he's probably going to be a favorite to go number 1 overall whenever he gets to go eligible for the draft.
His older brother is favored to go number 1 overall right now. Ohio State standout defensive end Joey Bosa, and it was a really good get for them to get his younger brother because there was a question for a while about if he would be coming to Ohio State following in his brother's footsteps, but they got him there, and that was a big get for them. Well, in national recruiting, 3 services have Alabama number 1, and ESPN has Florida State number 1. Who do you guys think deserves the top recruiting class?
Honestly, I'm not 100% sure on either class. Every single year, Alabama is going to bring in some of the best recruits in the country. So even though it says Florida State on ESPN, I think what Nick Saban is able to do to develop his players, I think this Alabama recruiting class is going to be eventually better than Florida State's.
Now, I do agree with it in terms of development, but as of right now, if you take a look at the kids right now,
as a whole,
I think it's Florida State. They got the number 1 cornerback. They got the number 2 dual threat quarterback in Malik Henry. They got the number 1 offensive guard. They got a top 5 cornerback. This team just got loaded again. They are just locking and reloading, and they are ready to fire away this season, and they are ready. Florida State is going to make the playoff this season.
Hey,
I called that as well, actually.
I got a quick question. So, we're talking about the best teams, Alabama, Florida State, but there's one team 49th in ESPN Insider. This is a team who went to the Rose Bowl, lost to Christian McCaffrey. The Iowa Hawkeyes, Chains, what happened? They finished 49th in recruiting.
It's really not that big of a headline.
What happened?
Let's hear what the excuse is from the Hawkeye apologists.
Let's hear.
What do you mean excuse? We got 12-2 off 2 and 3 star blue collar recruits. Are you joking me? Look, the fact of the matter is, I guarantee you, there's no better coach in the country than Kirk Ferentz at developing 2-star players into first-round draft picks. There have been countless examples of it. We don't need the 5 stars. We'll take our one great season every 3 or 4 years, and we love it. Hawkeye Nation is coming back undefeated this coming season, going back to the Big Ten championship and getting killed by Ohio State.
You heard it from the Hawkeye apologist himself. All right, from star athletes to stars on the stage, we'll discuss the Super Bowl halftime show coming up next on the Spill Sports Show. Stay with us.
To hard-hitting sports talk with the Spill Sports Show on KRNU2. Don't forget to check out our podcast at thespillkrnu.wordpress.com in the hours following the show.
That's like re-releasing a Tupac album and giving him a Grammy.
Now, live from Andersen Hall at the University of Nebraska, here's Matt Reynoldson, David Eickholt, and Scott Ayers.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Spill Sports Show. We are live worldwide on KRNU2. Matt Reynoldson, David Eickholt, and Scott Ayers, the royalty of radio roundtables, kicking off your weekend with sports talk. Now it's time for the weekly non-sports segment, the Pop Culture Spill, and we're sticking with the Super Bowl theme. Guys, what are your thoughts on the halftime performers in this year's Super Bowl?
Honestly, Coldplay? Really? Coldplay? Look, I get it. If this is 2008 and Viva La Vida has just come out, Coldplay is the band to use because they were great. It got me excited. I listened to it. But then again, that was when I was in elementary school or middle school. Time has gone by 8 years later, and they're like, yeah, let's give the bid to Coldplay. Come on. I get it. You got Beyonce, Bruno Mars, and Lady Gaga, but Lady Gaga hasn't had a great single since 2011 when she released Poker Face. And I'm disappointed in the Super Bowl committee.
I gotta disagree with you there. Lady Gaga is just churning out bangers every other year. Lady Gaga's last album, I think it was Art Pop or whatever. It was just fantastic. But no,
give me a break.
she's a great performer, and I'm glad she's performing the national anthem. But I'm really just pumped to dance to Single Ladies at halftime, and I'm sure all football fans really are because that's what gets football fans pumped. Beyonce. The only way I approve Lady Gaga even being in the Super Bowl halftime show is if she comes on with her meat dress again. As the only thing that's ever made her relevant. I don't want to see her. Bruno Mars, you look like an Oompa Loompa. I don't want to see you either. Coldplay, I mean, yeah, dude, I jammed your stuff when I was in 6th grade. That's so cool. But Beyonce is perfect. I have nothing bad to say about Beyonce.
Jeez.
She was great. Guys, it's just... I don't think Lady Gaga's even doing the halftime show, is she?
Well, on my good friend Wikipedia, it says performer Coldplay, Beyonce, Bruno Mars, and Lady Gaga.
Yeah, I'm going off Wikipedia as well.
Well, Wikipedia just churning out knowledge, but no, she's a very talented.
She's a
singer.
Very talented singer, talented.
She's interesting. She draws more interest than Coldplay does, as Peter Griffin of Family Guy once said. He got kicked out of Coldplay for suggesting that they write a song that's not whiny bullcrap. So I don't know. I don't think Coldplay will necessarily get a lot of football fans pumped up for the Super Bowl. I don't think Fix You is going to get me really really amped for the second half, for a classic second half of hard hitting football. What do you think, Scotty?
I can't wrap my head around it, because last year they had the big name of Katy Perry, and I was like, okay, Katy Perry.
And Left Shark.
Bring back Left Shark.
Bring back Left Shark.
Left Shark was by far the greatest thing that's ever happened to the Super Bowl. And this year, I get it, Taylor Swift, she has an agreement, I think, with Coca-Cola or something, so she can do Pepsi. But are you telling me that Coldplay was second in line behind Taylor Swift? Like, do you know how big of a drop-off that is?
You know what I think?
That's a huge
I
drop-off.
do have a theory. I think they got Coldplay to come in, put all the listeners to sleep, so the second half can come faster for us football fans, and we are ready to go in the second half. They're not going to get us. They don't want to get us pumped up for the second half. They want to draw us to sleep, so we have all the energy in the world to come back to the second half.
Wait a
ready to
second.
go.
Wait a second. I have a conceptual question here.
All right.
When's the last time you actually took a 20-minute nap and then woke up right away?
Like 2 days ago.
What?
Never done that.
You can't
No,
do that?
I've never done that.
Really?
It's like, oh, I'm gonna fall asleep for 20 minutes. 4 days later.
No, dude, I have a very good body clock. I wake up whenever I want to wake up because that's just how I am. It's how I live my life.
David Eickholt, ladies and gentlemen, I have a very good body. What's your favorite Super Bowl halftime show of all time?
Guys, honestly, Katy Perry she was just tremendous last year. She did a great job. She finished it with Firework, and, that's just a great song. Roar, Dark Horse, great music. Also really liked what Bruno Mars and the Red Hot Chili Peppers were able to do 2 years ago. Bruno Mars, great singer. But one question I always had was when they had Madonna perform back in, I believe, 2012. It was just almost as bad as... And no, you know what? It was worse than having Coldplay. Because you know what? I like Coldplay. I like their music. Madonna was relevant when my dad was in high school. My dad is now 60 years old. And I'm sorry, but Madonna was a terrible choice for the Super Bowl halftime show.
I'll tell you what, I've only had 2 Super Bowls in my lifetime that I actually really loved all the music. I thought Bruno Mars was awful. I thought he was a terrible halftime show.
He might not have been a great halftime show, but he performed well.
Yeah, I agree. Okay,
For
let's
him,
rewind.
you might not like his music, but he performed extremely well, especially the
I'm going
drums.
off my critiques of like an overall show. I like the music. I like the way they did it. He performed the songs well. I'm going to go back to 2010. I'm going to go back to The Who. Because The Who, I love The Who.
It was a cover band, though.
I don't care. I love The Who's music, and it's fantastic.
A lot of people were all over that, and I just could never understand it. When you're supposed to get the biggest names in the world for the Super Bowl halftime show, and
The Who is huge.
but it's a Who cover band.
It's still, their music is iconic.
I understand that, but like you're getting a cover band, like you're getting something I can go onto YouTube and watch. I guess I can go onto YouTube and watch Katy Perry, but it just blew my mind
But
that they were getting a cover band to perform for the Super
That
Bowl.
is my second favorite halftime. I'm going to go
your
my
favorite?
first. 2001, Aerosmith, NSYNC, Britney Spears,
Yeah.
Mary J. Blige, and Nelly. Fantastic. I loved all of them. I still love Nelly. NSYNC makes my heart melt, and Aerosmith is just on fire, and they just get me fired up, and I don't want to miss a thing.
That show felt like just a dream. All right. No, I think by far the best Super Bowl halftime show ever was clearly the Black Eyed Peas.
Yeah.
No, that was
okay, good.
That made me want to boom boom blow my ears off. That was awful.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
That was a joke. That was not accurate. That was not an accurate statement.
Accurate.
No, but
Accurate.
I wish we had the sound bite from Fergie trying to sing "I Got a Feeling" live. I mean, they're great. Don't get me wrong. I love the Black Eyed Peas. I have a lot of Black Eyed Peas songs. They're awful on a stadium field. Live. That was so bad.
Honestly, they needed auto-tune to save their careers because
I feel like right after that Super Bowl halftime show, their career it was over.
it it was really disappointing, too, because, here I am. I was a huge believer in Will.i.am, pretty much prayed to the guy at night, and then
Will.i.am is love. Will.i.am is life.
And then the Black Eyed Peas come on stage, and I was like, this is just not what I expected. It was terrible, to say the least.
Guys, I do have one last show. You guys, I don't barely remember this. I watched it on YouTube 2 nights ago. 1997, The Blues Brothers. Phenomenal.
I guarantee you can't even recall a single second of that show.
Of course I can. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we're all 37 years old here.
Yeah.
We're not actually Nebraska students.
Denver Broncos actually won that Super Bowl, fun fact.
Yeah, see, exactly. I thought you would have liked that too.
Little foreshadowing for the second hour. Well, from stage stars to a man who was once a highly touted 4-star recruit, our favorite running back, Jordan Stevenson, had just signed with Wisconsin last year at this time. Even jumping from school to school never stopped Stevenson from speaking his mind, which today leads us to everyone's favorite segment, the Jordan Stevenson Tweet of the Week.
Hello, Twitter bird.
Former Nebraska running back Jordan Stevenson tends to say some interesting, inspirational things.
It's just all about it, going in there with a great mindset and just knowing the plan, sticking to the plan. That's my favorite motto, sticking to the plan. Man, the sky's the limit. Anything's possible.
His quotes are words to live by, and his Twitter game is just as strong. Without further ado, here's the Jordan Stevenson Tweet of the Week.
Well, Jordan had a tough week, which brought about some inspiring quotes. Jordan Stevenson tweets, "Everybody will not be on emotional level, life experience level, pain level, love level, passion. Also, that's why most relationships don't last." It's worth noting in this tweet that the only semblance of punctuation he used was in the wrong place. We now go live to David 2 Chainz Eickholt for the analysis.
Now, boys, I sat last night at a candlelit desk trying to decipher this code, and it reminded me of the great philosopher Plato. I sat there for hours on end, mind-boggled by this, and I've come up with a conclusion. This is why Jordan Stevenson didn't get into Wisconsin. He couldn't even punctuate the sentence correctly. But at the end of the day, you know
Savage.
what? You know what? It's not his fault. He had a really tough week, and I did listen to some 2 Chainz, and I did listen to some Kendrick Lamar and other music of such, so that I could try and decipher this. He is at such a high. He has such a high IQ. I can't decipher it. I can't do it.
You know what?
He's on another level. I can't do it.
It's what love does to you, man. You get emotional, the tears start getting in your eyes, they get on the keyboard, and next thing you know, the typing just isn't there. So I'm going to give him some slack. I'm going to believe that, he was just sad. He was just feeling sad. So he wasn't thinking about the punctuation. He was thinking about
himself,
maybe
life.
Thinking about a loved one he doesn't have in his life anymore. So
as he was blasting Kevin Gates all week.
He tweeted many Kevin Gates lyrics. Well, let's decipher the wording of this tweet.
All right, let's do it.
The emotional level, the life experience level, the pain level, the love level, the passion. That is something nobody can equal because they're not Jordan Stevenson.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not necessarily why most relationships don't last. I think you're being a little bit uninspiring here, Mr. Inspiring Jordan Stevenson. And I really wanted to feel uplifted by your tweets this week, but
just made me sad, man.
It made me sad because Jordan, you told me with this tweet, I know you were subtweeting me, you told me with this tweet that I'm not on your emotional level, that I'm not on your life experience level, that I'm not on your pain level, that I'm not on your love level. I have the same passion as you do, and I know it. Jordan, reach out to me, man. I'm here for you. I'm here for you.
Now, I know you've gone through more things than me, Jordan, but there's one major difference between you and I. I got into Wisconsin, and you did not.
Mic drop.
And as David drops his microphone, he's still here in Nebraska, so I don't know what that really does.
Still lasted longer than Jordan Stevenson's football career in Nebraska.
So now David is just taking shots at poor Poor Jordan Stevenson.
Yeah, poor Jordan Stevenson.
I'm sorry, Jordan. I love you.
Who poses with Audis and Beamers all the time and throws up the deuces. But no, that's fine. Go on, Scotty.
Two's up.
You know what? You guys are kind of bashing my boy Jordan, and I just want someone's got to defend the man. So, Stevenson, if you want a bud, reach out to me. I won't put my number on radio, but you know how to contact me.
Now, let me say this. I would say 2's up. But he never scored a touchdown, so there's no reason for me to put the 2's up.
You know what? He was close. He was only 85 yards away. That's closer than any of us will ever get to a touchdown.
That is 100% true, except
I scored an intramural touchdown 2 weeks ago in the snow, so I don't know what you're talking about. I had more touchdowns in my intramural career than Jordan Stevenson did in his intramural or college football career.
David 2 Chainz intramural legend Eickholt. Ladies and gentlemen.
Now, before we get to the Legends thing, people talk about Steph Curry and LeBron James. Oh, they've only had a few breakout seasons, and now we're giving David Eickholt the legend thing because he scores 2 touchdowns in intramural football. All I'm saying is, Chainz, great prospect, has a lot of depth, has some adversity ahead of him, and I don't know if he's going to be a legend. We're just going to see in the next few seasons.
There will be a new 30 for 30 documentary, David 2 Chainz Eickholt, the intramural legend that lasted for 10 days.
Well, we know who will always be a legend, Jordan Stevenson. And our weekly call out to Jordan Stevenson. If you want to be on the show, you are first in line. You know how to contact us. Slide into my DMs, Jordan Stevenson. All right, we got another hour for you, hour 2 of the Spill Sports Show. It's packed with Super Bowl analysis, and it's coming your way after the break. Stay with us.
The Spill Sports Show with Matt Reynoldson, David Eickholt, and Scott Ayers. Never miss a show again. Check out our podcast at thespillkrnu.wordpress.com.
The 76ers could have drastically improved their organization by drafting Walter Pitchford.
Quite frankly, if he wins a Super Bowl, I'll direct it 30 for 30 on it.
I've watched this kid play multiple times on national television.
You like watching kids, David?
Dude, I love basketball. Excuse me.
The Spill Sports Show, every Friday from 1 to 3 on KRNU2. You're kicking off the weekend with the Spill Sports Show. Listen every Friday on KRNU2 or 24/7 on thespillkrnu.wordpress.com.
We are talking about people that play games for money.
I love to bring a Jersey Shore type feel.
That makes me angry. That makes me sad. That gets me fired up.
Here's your hosts, Matt Reynoldson, David Eickholt, and Scott Ayers.
Did that, put him in the aisle. Johnny the Jet Rogers just tore them loose from their shoes.
You believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable. Comes to LeBron. He takes a fadeaway for the win. Hey! Knocked it down!
Here goes Davis. Oh, my God! Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
You can't believe what just happened. What a time to be alive.
Hit me with the horn, 20. Keep making noise! Yeah! Oh! Here we go now! 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 Check it out!
Welcome back to the second hour of the Spill Sports Show. We are live worldwide on KRNU2. Matt Reynoldson, David Eickholt, Scott Ayers, the royalty of radio roundtables, kicking off your weekend with the hard-hitting sports talk you need. We're talking all things sports, but there's one story bigger than the rest: the Super Bowl. It's a milestone Super Bowl, number 50 in fact, and we've got a treat for a matchup. The Denver Broncos, the number 1 defense in the NFL, face off against likely MVP winner Cam Newton and the prolific Carolina Panthers offense. Guys, let's start with the main storyline, the end of Peyton Manning's legacy versus the beginning of Cam Newton's. What would this mean to Peyton?
Peyton Manning has gone through hell and back. He's back finally in the Super Bowl for what is most likely his final game, at least in a Denver uniform, and he wants this more than anything. Currently 1-2 in Super Bowls, and to be fair, in that Super Bowl they lost to Seattle. The defense was terrible for Denver. They were, I think, ranked 23rd or 24th in the NFL, and the script is it's been flipped. This Denver offense, not nearly as potent as it was 2 years ago, but he does have the number 1 defense backing him up. Peyton Manning wants this more than any player right now in San Francisco. Peyton Manning wants to end his career on a prolific high note.
And there's been multiple reports that this will be Peyton Manning's last game, and I 100% believe that. He's already discussed and made it known that he will need hip replacement surgery after his NFL career. Best of luck to him for that. I agree. Peyton Manning definitely wants this more than anyone, but it just comes down to Peyton Manning needs to get a second one. He really does. I love the guy. I think he's one of the best, if not the best, in my opinion, quarterback and player of all time. Tom Brady, I understand. Outstanding player, phenomenal competitor, has won multiple Super Bowls. But Peyton Manning is always just been, I feel like, on another level at sometimes. But nobody wants it more than Peyton. Cam Newton will get another shot. I firmly believe the Carolina Panthers will be back in the Super Bowl next year if they maintain their current roster. I think they're good enough. And I'll tell you what, it's getting harder and harder for me to pick against Denver. It really is.
And the respect is just pouring in for Peyton Manning. A lot of players know this is his last game. They respect what he's done as a quarterback. Here's Josh Norman of the Carolina cornerback from the Carolina Panthers on Peyton Manning.
Oh man, I expect an all-time great to show up on Sunday night. An all-time great. And that right there I welcome, because there's nothing better than facing the greatest or one of the greats, because if you can match up against that, then who say you can't be in that conversation?
Josh Norman obviously looking at Peyton Manning and aspiring to be what he has become in the face of the greater picture of football. And that's high respect from a guy who's a great player like Josh Norman. They're looking to start building their legacy, is Carolina. And this could be the game to start doing it in. You got to take down a legend to become a legend, and I think Josh Norman realizes that.
What I love about this, too, is Josh Norman is an outstanding, all-pro cornerback. And he has been known to run his mouth more than a few times. But I'm really happy that he still pays respects to a legend such as Peyton Manning, and he really genuinely means it. He's not just saying it for the media. I 100% believe he meant that. And he wants Peyton Manning at his best because Josh Norman wants to beat him at Peyton Manning's best. And I'll tell you what, it's really nice to see, though, because I love Carolina because I have never seen a team that good that has that much fun. They are, they're very serious when it comes to it, but it's cool to see like these guys, make a big play or just get a sack or whatever, score a touchdown. They're smiling, they're laughing, they're just having fun, and it's so hard to pick against. These are probably two of my favorite teams in the NFL. It's awesome. I really hope that everyone's at their best.
Yeah, I think what Norman said about Manning is just showing tremendous respect, but it's kind of funny. Today, Josh Norman came out and said about Emmanuel Sanders, he said that he's never heard of Emmanuel and that Emmanuel needs to go to the practice field. And look, I love when players talk trash and all that, but I don't know if that's really the right way to go about things, because you really don't want to give another team a chip on their shoulder. And I think Denver's handled it pretty well, trying not to say anything too ridiculous about the other team. But we'll see what happens. This Broncos offense has a lot to prove because they know Carolina's defense is still a stout defense. And if Peyton Manning can play a turnoverless game, we'll see what happens.
And I agree. And it's interesting that Josh Norman would see exactly. It's interesting that he would do that because the Denver Broncos should already have a huge chip on their shoulder for Peyton Manning's last game. Yep. And now you're going to give the people that Manning's throwing the ball to another chip on the shoulder. I'll tell you what, it's really on the verge of confident and cockiness. It's really making me debate.
That's what I've been thinking too.
But I don't know. I really wouldn't want to take off a team with a legend such as Peyton Manning. So it's going to be really interesting. I'm definitely going to keep a close eye on the Norman matchup.
One player that's not trying to put a chip on the other team's shoulder is showing a lot of respect, and that's the legend himself, Peyton Manning. Here's Manning on Cam Newton.
He's been awesome. He's been awesome, man. It's the best word I can think of. He's been a great passer. He's been a great runner. He's been a great leader. You don't go 17-1 as a starting quarterback without being awesome, and that's what he's been this year without a doubt. There's no doubt in my mind he's going to be the MVP on Saturday night.
You know, that's high praise from Peyton Manning. Obviously knows what a good quarterback looks like because he gets to look in the mirror every day. But Cam Newton, he's absolutely right. Cam Newton has had a marvelous season. Cam Newton's becoming the new face of football. You could say whatever you want about the comments he made about people being scared of a black quarterback really taking the stage as Cam Newton is doing now. He made those comments last week. He's stepped back a little bit on him this week, but the main thing is here, everybody knows Cam Newton is a great quarterback. Is this the beginning of his legacy?
I think regardless of the outcome, it is the beginning of his legacy. I think that legacy actually kind of started when he won that national title at Auburn, and now he's just starting to have the accolades pile up. He's probably going to be the MVP of this NFL season, and even if the Panthers don't win the Super Bowl this upcoming Sunday, something tells me they will be back in Cam Newton's career. Cam Newton's just a tremendous player. And yeah, he has that childish attitude on the field, but he's fun to watch. He just makes the game of football overall more exciting and more fun.
There were questions just a season ago when the Panthers were 3-9 before they rattled off this huge win streak. There were questions whether Cam Newton was sustainable for this team just a year ago, and now he's winning the MVP. Now he's the quarterback everybody wanted him to be, the quarterback everybody saw coming out of college, coming out of Auburn. And yes, I do agree with you, Scotty, that started his legacy, but his legacy dipped for a while. Nobody paid attention to Carolina until Cam Newton started taking over games and winning games, and this is just such an interesting spectacle to see because how one man can motivate his entire team like this. Say what you want about Cam Newton, whether you like him, whether you dislike him. The man's a hell of a leader, and he goes out every game, works his butt off, helps his teammates work their butts off, and it's just a spectacle to see. He does great things off the field with charity, and let's not forget about giving footballs to the kids in the front row.
Yeah.
That's a fun spectacle that has never been...
He goes out of his way to do, too.
Exactly, and it's never been done before. Nothing like that has ever been done before, and he's really making a name and image, not just for himself, but for the team, and they're very likable. It's hard to dislike Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers because it's just a fun story how their turnaround behind Cam Newton, behind such a great athlete and such a great personality.
Something that's been really interesting to me is, remember, I don't know how much you guys watched Johnny Manziel when he was in college. I've never seen a player do the things that Johnny Manziel did in terms of making huge plays and pulling plays from nothing. And yet, I thought I would never see something like that ever again. Cam Newton has done that so many times this season, and he's in the NFL doing this. Cam Newton, right now, is turning into the face of the NFL. He's the next generation. I have nothing but praise, and I think the whole dip of his legacy, I think that's a little bit overblown because I still pay attention to him. You had to have known that he was going to do something just by his play style. He was never really that bad of a passer. He just didn't know the right form he just didn't do a couple of the little technicalities. He has fixed those, and that's why you see him going off like he has this year.
Yeah, absolutely. He's fixed, and Carolina didn't have the best supporting cast, and they still don't. You look at that receiving core, Ted Ginn Jr. being a number one wideout.
Stonehands Teddy Ginn.
Stonehands Teddy Ginn, and that's what he's been working with. Yep. And to have a 17-1 team, Greg Olsen is a fantastic tight end. He's not Gronkowski level, but he's a very talented tight end for the Carolina Panthers. And Cam Newton, I think his energy really helps him as a leader as well.
Let's talk about a little bit of the talent on Carolina, not at the skill positions. Let's talk about the blindside left tackle from the man who invented the blind side, Michael Orr. The movie The Blind Side was focused on his story and everything about him. Cam Newton texted him in the offseason and said, I don't want you, I need you here in Carolina. And Orr has been marvelous at protecting Cam Newton's blind side all year, keeps Cam Newton protected when he needs to throw the ball, keeps the rushers off the edge when Cam Newton wants to scramble. He has been as key to this team as any other player. What's the significance of Michael Orr on this offense?
Well, I think the beauty of it, too, is that Michael Orr was thinking of retirement when Cam Newton reached out to him. And now Michael Orr is having a fantastic season, but his job is definitely not done yet. He's going against maybe the best, no, it is the best pass rush in the NFL, in Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, Antonio Smith, Derek Wolfe. Those four guys. And look, obviously, Michael Orr's not going to be blocking all of them.
Yeah.
He's probably going to have to deal with either Ware or Miller.
Miller with those inside blitzes.
Yep, and he better be ready because DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller are the scariest pass rushers
Duo.
right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Duo in the league.
If you saw what they did against Tom Brady and the Patriots, I would be terrified to go up against that. I don't care who's on my line. But I'll tell you what, another thing to watch for in the Super Bowl, if you love Battle of the Trenches, I think this is going to epitomize, and you're going to love this game. And I think it just shows the work ethic of these teams. Michael Orr is an outstanding offensive tackle, and what people don't realize if you're not a big football fan, the left tackle is, if not next to the quarterback, the most important position in the sport of football.
They get paid a lot for it, too.
They're second highest paid position in the NFL behind the quarterback.
Because they need to protect the quarterback, who's the most important person on the field. Scotty, you mentioned something just a minute ago. Let's talk about the impact of Von Miller and how he's really carrying this great Denver defense. Had a pick in an earlier playoff game
against New England.
And he wreaks havoc all over the field.
Yep.
What kind of impact can he have on this game and in causing some chaos for the Carolina offense?
And, it's what Wade Phillips has been able to do as a defensive coordinator. His schemes of blitzes is a much need from what Jack Del Rio offered just a year ago. And honestly, watching Von Miller, TJ Ward, Darian Stewart, Brandon Marshall at linebacker, there's not a whole lot of holes in this defense. You look at Chris Harris Jr., Aqib Talib, and Bradley Roby, all having tremendous postseasons. Cam Newton better be getting rid of that football quick because Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, and Derek Wolfe will all be getting to him within 5 seconds. That's what they did against New England, and it proved to be very successful. This Broncos defense has a chip on their shoulder because no one has talked about them during this.
Absolutely not. They've been
super about Carolina.
Yeah, they've been super undercovered. I think, and they've been super disrespected for what they've earned. But what I'm most interested to see is, can Cam Newton run at all?
Yeah,
because I'm not sure he can. He's going to have to become a pure pocket passer, and Ted Ginn is going to have to do something down the field. He's going to have to run right past. I think Aqib Talib.
I think it's got to be Aqib Talib.
Talib.
Chris Harris Jr. is the number one, so
it'll be interesting to see. They'll probably mix and match, honestly, to see what works. But I'm interested to see, is Cam Newton going to be able to scramble? How much time can he buy? But let's be clear: the Panthers' offensive line is better than the Patriots' offensive line, because I don't think the Patriots' offensive line has actually been that good this season.
Let's talk a little bit of scheme real quick. Do you put a linebacker on Greg Olsen?
So what Denver Broncos actually did against New England that actually proved to work fairly well until late in the game is they would actually put either Bradley Roby or Chris Harris Jr. on Rob Gronkowski. That way you've got the speed on him, and to help that as well, they put a linebacker over the top to really limit Gronkowski's use. Greg Olsen is not nearly as good as Rob Gronkowski. However, he's still a quick tight end. So the likes of Brandon Marshall would really have to play a good job covering because Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware are not covering. Von Miller is listed as a linebacker. He's simply a pass rusher. You can't put him covering.
That's whenever you see all his highlights, and then whenever you watch him specifically in games, that's exactly what he's doing. He is pass rushing. He has never really been known to. He's not a covering linebacker. He never has been. Don't try to make him something he's not on the biggest stage in football. I I wouldn't put a linebacker. Greg Olson's too talented. He's not obviously likes of Gronkowski or Tony Gonzalez or anything like that. I think you just put a big corner on him and you have another corner in there instead. I think you have to. I don't see really what else you could do.
He's such a weapon for this team. And, whether you're going over the top or, through the middle, out routes, whichever the Panthers decide to throw for their offense, and that's a little question for later. What type of throws will they ask Cam Newton to make? But let's talk about the stage. And will teams get a little carried away with over scheming for the Super Bowl? And should they over scheme for the Super Bowl, or what should they do here as far as scheming for this big game?
I think the young team is the one that's going to make the mistakes here. I think the Broncos are going to rely heavily on Wade Phillips' great experience and great schemes he's come up with this year. They're going to, even though Peyton Manning is on offense, they're going to take his advice because this is his 4th Super Bowl. They're going to go off him. They just don't want to make mistakes. They don't want to over-scheme because they need to stick with what they've been doing because that's what's been getting them this far in the first place. The team that over-prepares is the one that's going to lose this game, and I 100% believe that.
And, Arizona had 7 turnovers against Carolina. Denver knows they can't make that mistake. And Denver was in this big dance just 2 years ago. They have the experience. Chris Harris Jr. and Von Miller did not get to play in that Super Bowl, so they're going to be hungry in this one. Aqib Talib, he might have been there with New England, but he wants to get there with the Denver Broncos. And I don't know. All I'm thinking is C.J. Anderson. He has to step up for the run game for the Denver Broncos. He was a great running back just a year ago at the end of the season. C.J. Anderson, I think, is the best running back on the team. Ronnie Hillman has more speed. C.J. Anderson has much better field vision.
Absolutely.
C.J. Anderson and Ronnie Hillman have really carried this offense this year, but between Peyton Manning and Brock Osweiler at the helm at quarterback. But they've really relied on the run game a little bit more, which has stabilized their offense when they've needed it, especially in highlight games against the Patriots. Both in November. Was it November or December?
I believe it was late November.
Late November.
Both in late November and in the playoffs just a couple weeks ago. They really relied on Hillman and Anderson to carry this team. Anderson ran for the winning touchdown in overtime in the first matchup. And these guys really have the vision. They have the strength to get those 3, 4, 5-yard pops on first down, which is what Manning and this offense needs, because Manning's not going to sling it all over the field in this game.
No.
If anybody thinks that Manning's going to come out and be vintage Peyton Manning and just keep throwing 25-yard seams, it's not going to happen. He's going to throw little dump-off passes. He's going to use his backs in the passing game out of the backfield. But you need those 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4 type situations like Anderson and Hillman can get you. How big of a load will they carry in this game?
I think it depends not on the first 2 series, but after 3 or 4 series, if the running backs really die off, if Carolina is able to stop that run game, the significance they will be playing is really just catching passes out of the backfield. Obviously, throughout the game, they will be running the football, but when the Broncos struggle to run, that's when Manning will take over and run the hurry-up offense in the shotgun formation, and you might see a halfback draw here and there, but it really depends. Can they get that run game going right away?
Is Peyton Manning going to have another 12-yard rush, Scotty?
He's going to have a 30-yard touchdown run.
He was talking about that. We were watching some videos of media day earlier, and Peyton Manning was joking around about they might put a linebacker spy on him because of that 12-yard run a couple weeks ago against the Patriots. But David, what do you think about Ronnie Hillman and C.J. Anderson? How much load should they carry?
I think they got to establish a run game to give Peyton Manning opportunities. Because remember, Peyton Manning, I'm 99% sure this is Peyton Manning's last game of his NFL career. I can't see him coming back next season.
He would not go to the Broncos. Will not re-sign him. There's talk that if he comes back, he would go to the LA Rams. But
that'd be crazy. I think Peyton Manning would be crazy. I think this is his last game. He signs a one-day contract with the Colts, and he retires as a Colt because Jim Irsay wants him to retire as a Colt, but I don't know how highly Peyton Manning thinks of Jim Irsay.
Jim Irsay, yeah.
So we'll see. But I feel like they need to establish a run game. They need an escape route. They need they need to give Peyton Manning opportunities to succeed because, like you said, it's not going to be vintage Peyton Manning. C.J. Anderson, I think if he has 75 yards on the ground, that's already a huge boost to this Denver Broncos offense, which will open up Peyton Manning to hopefully hit a few long passes. And hopefully Demaryius Thomas's hands are back to normal because he's been dropping so many passes this year.
Scotty, when Peyton Manning does get those opportunities, is Demaryius Thomas versus Josh Norman the biggest matchup on the field?
And, I think that will be the most talked about matchup. No doubt in my mind. Because Demaryius Thomas, let's not forget, this is a guy who people see as a top 5, top 10 wide receiver in the NFL against Josh Norman, who really, before this year, not a lot of people talked about him. The only reason why people did is he got in that preseason fight with Cam Newton. Norman's having a great season, but also, if Demaryius Thomas, let's say he gets shut down, will the other receivers and Emmanuel Sanders and how about Vernon Davis? He gets signed. Could he have an impact in the Super Bowl? People are talking about he could be an unsung hero in the Super Bowl. It's really going to come down to, though, can Demaryius Thomas get open against a good Josh Norman cornerback?
I think Demaryius Thomas gets 4 receptions in the game. I think Sanders has to really come alive and play with a chip on his shoulder because of Josh Norman's trash talk. And I love what you said. I think Vernon Davis is due to have a breakout game because he is so talented. I've always thought of him as a really, really good receiving tight end, a decent blocker. I think if he has 4 or 5 receptions, that's another huge boost to this offense.
And let's not forget, Demaryius Thomas 2 years ago set the record for
13 receptions,
most receptions in a Super Bowl. So obviously it was a blowout loss, but Demaryius Thomas is a very talented receiver, and I don't know if Josh Norman has really picked up on that due to his trash talk.
Yeah, and I didn't. Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Peyton Manning have the most completions in NFL history for a Super Bowl?
He might have. I don't know the exact, but
I think he had 33, and I think that was a record. But I mean, what's 33? completions when
you score
get
8
killed?
points.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. Well, we'll continue to talk Super Bowl coming up next when we bring in 93.7 The Ticket's Connor Happer. That's up next on the Spill Sports Show. Stay with us.
Woo! Bring 'em out, bring 'em out, bring 'em out, bring 'em out. It's hard to yell when the barrel's in your mouth. Come on.
You're listening to the Spill Sports Show on KRNU2.
Just got to do what I got to do and when I got to do it, So basically just doing what I got to do every time I step on the court and do what I got to do.
Now, live from Andersen Hall on the UNL campus, here's Matt Reynoldson, David Eickholt, and Scott Ayers.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Spill Sports Show. Matt Reynoldson, David Eickholt, Scott Ayers, the royalty of radio roundtables coming at you. And we're live with Connor Happer, host of Morning Take on 93.7 The Ticket. Connor, thanks for being with us.
Hey, how's it going today, guys?
Going great. Great.
Thank you.
Great to have you. So we're talking Super Bowl here. What do you think the key matchups are in this game, notably ones that are under the radar?
Well, I think the Panthers are still going to be, we look at Cam Newton, what he does for the Panthers, it's pretty much everything. But really what they do well as a team is they're pretty efficient on the ground. And they do that with a couple running backs out there. You see Jonathan Stewart the most. I mean, it's not under the radar. I'll just tell you that right up front. I mean, it's going to be their ability to run the ball against the Broncos D-line, which dominated last week against the Patriots. So that'll be an extremely interesting thing to watch because they tore apart the Broncos D-line and the Broncos defense as a whole. They've been a very good defense. They tore apart the Patriots offensive line, which, it was a little bit of patchwork, but they've always been known as a solid unit up there, and they disrupted Tom Brady all day. So if they can get in the face of Cam Newton early, and the guy seems kind of unflappable, but if they can get in the face of Cam Newton and kind of make him uncomfortable there early, that's something to watch out for because Newton's a guy who likes to get in a rhythm, and once he does, there's kind of no stopping that trade. So that's going to be one to watch out for, absolutely, defensive line against the offensive line there. And the Panthers certainly have to have the ability to run the ball as well. As far as under the radar matchups, I don't know. it'll be fun to watch Peyton Manning up against this Panthers secondary, which has been incredible all year. But and no one's going to tell you that's under the radar. But those are the key ones for me.
And Connor, what does this Denver Broncos offense need to do to stay in the game? Obviously, don't force turnovers. That's a pretty obvious one. But what's another key thing that this Denver Broncos offense needs to do?
Yeah, they just got to stay the course. They just got to stay steady. They have to run the ball with efficiency. And if they get Peyton Manning, the same Peyton Manning they did 2 weeks ago against New England, they're going to be in decent shape in this one. I had the Broncos getting blown out by the Patriots a couple weeks ago, and then Peyton Manning showed up. Like he looked like an old version of Peyton Manning. So he definitely is gaining that arm strength back. He's gaining what he lost off the injury. So they just have to stay the course. Yeah, they have to run the ball with efficiency with C.J. Anderson. They have to just, and you nailed it right there in the question. Don't turn the ball over. Because if they give it to the Panthers, then the Panthers are going to have a field day with that. And that defense, we all know, is a defense that plays on pure emotion, and they like doing it. So if you give them a couple easy ones early, then it could look ugly.
Now, Connor, let me ask you this. Cam Newton, back in 2011, when he was on the national championship stage, he didn't have a great game, but he didn't necessarily play bad. Do you see Cam Newton being at least somewhat rattled on, his first really big stage in the NFL?
I don't see it. I mean, he's led a 15-1 team this year, and this team underratedly is. I mean, I don't know if I'm ready to call them one of the best teams of all time, but they're 15-1, man, and they look really, really good doing it. Their defense, this is kind of aside from Cam Newton a little bit, but their defense is one of the best that I've seen. So that's something to watch out for them. And Cam Newton's been in the face of it this whole time throughout all the stuff that whether he's a lightning rod figure in the NFL. So he's been able to kind of ride that fire out as we've gone on the season long. Is he or is he not a superstar? He's a bona fide superstar in this league. He can take anything that's thrown at him, I think.
We are live with Connor Happer here on the Spill Sports Show. Connor, let's take a look big picture here. Which franchise wants this more? Carolina for their first Super Bowl or Denver for Peyton Manning?
Ooh, that's a good one. Geez, I mean, you got to think that Peyton Manning, if he wins this one, is going to ride off into the sunset and just take it. But I don't know. Oh man, I don't know. I haven't really thought about that one that much. The Panthers feel like they are a little bit disrespected, and they're a 15-1 team. And they're 15-1 in the regular season. They dismantled the Seahawks for most of the game against them, and still, I mean, it's like we're not talking about the Panthers that much. Like I said just before there, the Panthers are going to go down. Might go down as one of the greatest teams we've seen as far as record-wise, and their defense is incredible. I just feel like they think they're underrated, and they're playing with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. So I guess I'll go with the Panthers, but it would be equally as great to watch Peyton Manning right up into the sunset. I think those are two pretty good storylines in this one for sure.
And Connor, I really like how you mentioned, Carolina playing with a chip on your shoulder, but you also look at this Denver Broncos team, and they've been almost disrespected throughout this season. Like you said, you said you saw New England was going to blow them out, and that was kind of a consensus throughout the country. So right now, both teams kind of are playing with a chip on your shoulder. Who's going to come out with that more fiery edge? Because right now I feel like the Denver Broncos have been extremely disrespected. A lot of people are talking about Carolina this, Carolina that, lopsided game. Does Denver Broncos, do they have such a big chip on their shoulder that they're going to come out with a big fiery passion?
Yeah, it's a good point. And even while I'm answering that question, it's like, I'm underrating the Broncos, right? So,
right.
I mean, yeah, these guys, that defense is just as good as the Panthers. So absolutely, they're going to have that same type of chip on their shoulder. I feel like, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it just feels like the Panthers have a little bit of a younger, almost Seahawks-like swagger.
Right.
From a couple years ago.
Absolutely.
So they're that up and coming team, And the Broncos have kind of been there. They've been to a Super Bowl recently, although they were blown out in it. But they have been in the Super Bowl. They kind of feel like the elder statesmen in this.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I do feel like they're also being underrated. I mean, we're talking about two teams. They're both in the Super Bowl, and they're both underrated.
Yeah, exactly.
It kind of seems crazy. But I think you make a good point there that the Broncos haven't exactly – I know for sure that the Broncos defense hasn't gotten enough respect throughout the season.
Yeah.
What they've been able to do. I mean, they lost Peyton Manning through a good portion of the season there.
Right.
And they were still able to kind of find their way through that. So, yeah, they're underrated as well.
Now, Connor, let me ask you this. Do you see how many changes are we going to see the Denver Broncos doing scheme-wise? Because obviously Tom Brady and Cam Newton are two totally different style players. Do you see the Denver Broncos blitzing more, or do you think they're going to kind of take it back a notch compared to what they did against Tom Brady?
Oh, I think you got to go after Cam Newton. I think you do. Like I said earlier, you have to find a way to get in his grill early. If you can't do that, then like I said, Cam's more of he's a rhythm guy. Although he has that dual threat capability too. He can turn into a fullback at times. So, but I really do. You have to get after him.
Yeah.
In the pass game, you have to blitz him. Don't let him just sit back there all day, because then he's got two options. Make him have one option and then see where you go from there. It's not going to be as easy. I think this Panthers offensive line has come together pretty well, and they've done a pretty good job at protecting Cam Newton all year. And Cam does a good job of protecting himself, of course, but
yeah.
It's not an easy task, but I think you have to stay true to that game plan.
Let's keep focusing on the Panthers' offensive line a little bit. We are live with Connor Happer of 93.7 The Ticket here on the Spill Sports Show. Mike Tolbert, how much will he be able to do with the help of this offensive line against a great Denver front seven?
Who'd you say? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Mike Tolbert.
Mike Tolbert. I love that guy. He's the big fat running back he was the guy who steals all your fantasy points on Sunday afternoon. So, I like him barreling through that offensive line for sure. I like Jonathan Stewart better, and Tolbert's kind of the backup there. But it'll be interesting to watch him go through it. I don't think people really understand Mike Tolbert and what he does with his team. He's like, I don't know, how much does he weigh, guys? Like 280 pounds or like 270 pounds or something like that. He's a monster. And you get him off the ball, he's just like a little tiny bowling ball running through the line of scrimmage. I really like the guy. I think he'll be able to get his fair share of yards on Sunday.
All right, the big matchup everyone is looking forward to is this Carolina offense against the number one offense in Carolina against the number one defense in Denver. Who do you think is going to outperform the other?
Oof. That's the matchup. You're right. That's the one that everyone's looking toward. I don't know if one has to outperform the other. I think they're both going to take their fair share of lumps. But at the end of the day, and I think this will decide the Super Bowl eventually, at the end of the day, I just think Cam Newton is the guy this year. I think he's the league's MVP, and so I got him coming out on top in this one against the Denver D, who will, yes, get theirs at some point against the Carolina offense, but I got Cam Newton. I'm going to ride him all the way.
Speaking of Cam Newton here, what would this win mean? We know what the win would mean for Peyton Manning's legacy. What would this win mean for the beginning of Cam Newton's legacy?
Yeah, it would be enormous. I mean, it would. We talked about how is he a superstar? Is he not? And you wouldn't be able to say no if he got a Super Bowl win. So if he gets a Super Bowl victory under his belt, he's going to have to be recognized up there in the same league as, Peyton Manning. I'm not saying he's the same type of player, but the same caliber of winning quarterback as a Tom Brady, although, Tom Brady's got, 5 Super Bowls. You're not going to be up that close to that level yet, but you're going to have to be mentioned in the same sentence as the top quarterbacks in the NFL if you weren't doing so already. I would. I think Cam Newton is incredible. He's about as good as we have to offer in the NFL. And if you're not on not on the board yet, then you should probably hop on the bandwagon there. It would do massive amounts for his legacy, that's for sure. And you're right. You said at the question, it's just the start of it. He can win a couple more after this. I think Carolina's set up to do some more things, and they could add some more weapons. You don't realize that he's doing this basically with no-name wide receivers, and you lose your biggest wide receiver at the very beginning of the year, Delvin Benjamin. He doesn't play a game the entire year, and a couple no-name running backs pretty much too. It's just Cam Newton. So, yeah, that's a pretty big deal.
Now, Connor, let me ask you this. Do you think we're going to see vintage Demaryius Thomas, or is he just going to go back to, kind of his struggles this year of dropping some open passes, or is he going to come out with the surefire hands that at least most of us, including myself, have come to expect from him?
They're going to need it. And Demaryius Thomas, you're right, has been up and down this year. And I think most of that you can actually blame on the quarterbacks and what, the little flux of position that they've had there. You haven't had Peyton Manning, and even when you did have Peyton Manning, he was unhealthy, not throwing very good balls. And that one game, I can't think back of exactly what game it was, but I was watching Peyton Manning. I think it was the first game of the playoffs against the Steelers. He was throwing ducks. And that was the game where Denver had an incredible amount of drops, and you're like, okay, you got to help out Peyton Manning a little bit. But I think it goes the other way too. If you're out there throwing not very good spirals and you're throwing 10-mile-an-hour balls and your receivers are sitting there waiting on them, I think that's tough to concentrate for a receiver that's used to having surefire passes in his chest. So I think it goes a little bit of both ways. If we get good Peyton Manning, we're going to get good Demaryius Thomas. So I think that's the answer to the question.
Connor, you said you have Carolina winning in this game. Do you see this game going down to the wire in a similar Super Bowl we saw last year, or do you see Carolina really bringing it to Denver and pretty much dominating in this one?
It's hard to tell. I have the game pretty close at the end there. I don't know if it will go down to a final possession or even a final two possessions, or maybe you're in a situation where Denver's battling back in the fourth quarter or something like that. I had the Panthers winning, I think I said 32-24 or something like that. So by a score. But I don't know if that will tell the entire story of the game. I just like Carolina. I've been riding the train all season long. Might as well just ride it out here for one more game. But I will say this, and we talked about Denver being underrated.
Right.
They are. It's true. It's true. Their defense does not get near the credit that it should. I'm just going to go with Cam Newton to outlast them on Sunday.
We are live with 93.7 The Ticket's Connor Happer here on the Spill Sports Show. Connor, let's talk Carolina's offense's focus. Will Cam Newton try and gash Denver up the seams, or will we see a lot of short passes, a lot of quick outs, things like that?
Well, I think that's what they've kind of been doing all season long. They up the seams, and they have their one receiving target that they use the most, their leading receiver on their team, Greg Olsen. He's a tight end. He's going to be running straight up the middle, and that's kind of the weaker part of Denver's defense. They have Aqib Talib on the outside. I don't think you're going to throw a whole lot near him over there. He's one of the better corners in the NFL. So, and on top of that, you don't exactly have the wide receivers that can go up against Talib in that realm. So I think you're going to continue to see Carolina stick to the same game plan they've been using the entire season. Yeah, they throw some short balls, but they like to use that middle of the field for sure. So I think that'll continue.
Now, Connor, I know you picked Carolina to win this, but let me put you in this. Let me pose this question toward you. Denver wins if what happens?
They rattle Cam Newton. They have to get some sacks on him early, get a couple touches on him, and then see where it goes from there. I think I think Cam's proved to be pretty unflappable in the face of pressure, and he's been able to get up from a couple hard hits this year, and he's built like a truck. But if you can somehow get him on the ground a couple times, make him feel it a little bit, at least get him thinking about the pressure coming in his face, then we'll see where it goes from there. So I think that's key number one for them.
Connor, we talked about this here on the Spill Sports Show a little bit last week. Cam Newton's last championship performance was the BCS championship game that he didn't play all that well in. Do you think some of those nerves will come back being on this championship stage, or do you think Cam Newton's matured to the level that he's unflappable in this situation?
Well, he's definitely matured, that's for sure. But that's a good point you bring up. He didn't exactly play that well in that national championship game against Auburn, but on the other hand, their team was able to win. Now, I think they'll need more from Cam Newton in this case. They had a couple really good running backs for Auburn that year. So I think, it's Cam Newton or nothing for the Panthers offense. But, yeah, I do think that he has matured. Look at him from when he started in the league. He's always been kind of the same player as far as the production-wise, although this year you're getting more production out of him. It's a kind of an outlier season. He looks like the NFL MVP. But I think he's matured from the standpoint of being a leader, and I think that helps immensely when you're talking about Super Bowl performances, you're talking about championship performances. I would have little doubt in him if I was a member of the Carolina Panthers, believing in my leader at this point in the season.
Now, Connor, we're going to fast forward really quickly. Despite the outcome, however this game ends up turning out, do you think the Panthers should almost be considered a lock going into next season to at least go back to the Super Bowl?
It's hard to say that, but there's so much that happens within an NFL season. Maybe they slide back a little bit off the hangover that was the magical ride of the 2015 season, but it's hard to imagine that they do because they can only add pieces from here. Their defense is pretty much shored up. Luke Kuechly in the middle, he's going to be the guy there for his entire career. The defensive line is incredible. All they can do really is add pieces, and what I'm thinking of is a wide receiver. They've been needing to do that for a couple of years now. You get Cam Newton a couple weapons on the outside, get some pressure off him, and maybe add another versatile running back, and you get a little scatty guy in there instead of having two big bruisers in the middle, kind of like you do right now. It changes the dynamic a little bit. You can take a little pressure off Cam Newton. So I would say, they're absolutely the odds-on favorite to make it back at this point, but it's hard to just say them against the field, I think, because of so much that happens within a single NFL season.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of parity in the NFL every year. Yeah. That comes up. Nobody expected Carolina to get here this year. One more thing for you. Preview the Super Bowl halftime show. What do you think? How do you think Coldplay is going to do out there?
Yeah, Coldplay gets a bad rap, guys. I don't know why. I actually like Coldplay. I don't know. I'm quite obviously in the minority. We talked about it a little bit this morning on the show, and I was getting a little bit of hate for it. But it's fine. I like Coldplay, and I don't have a problem with Coldplay. They'll do fine. So yeah, I'm all about those guys. And then Beyonce to back them up. Yeah, it's going to be a great halftime.
You know what? Single ladies always gets me pumped up.
Yeah.
Well, with the number one defense in the league going up against such a prolific offense, let's hope this is a matchup for the ages. Connor, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Anytime.
Check out Connor Happer every weekday morning from 6 to 8 on 93.7 The Ticket. Coming up next, we're going to go with the final rundown. Stay with us. This is the Spill Sports Show. It's the final rundown. Welcome into our final segment here on the Spill Sports Show, where each host has a 30-second rant and the other hosts each get a 30-second rebuttal on each topic. It's crunch time, and things are about to get heated. David, you're on the clock.
Now, as usual, this opinion is about to be very unpopular. Steph Curry had an outstanding shooting night, 51 points. But I'm here to tell you that wasn't even the second most outstanding performance that night. He was third. Russell Westbrook had the best game of anyone. 24 points, 19 rebounds, 14 assists to only 2 turnovers. Loved it from him. John Wall had 41 points, 10 assists, and only 2 turnovers. Curry had 51 points. Okay, that's good. 7 rebounds, 2 assists for a point guard, and 7 turnovers? You've got to be kidding me. Great shooting night, though.
Scotty.
I'm still taking Steph Curry over Russ Westbrook or John Wall, because it's clear that if John Wall had the better performance, his team probably would have won the basketball game. David, how does that sound?
Draymond Green also had triple-double.
Don't talk. It's my turn to talk. And more importantly, we'll see really who's superior as the Thunder take on the Warriors tomorrow. I'm really excited to watch. I hope the Warriors stomp the Thunder, shut up the Russell Westbrook supporters.
You know, I agree with both of you because I think Steph Curry's 51-point performance was the best performance of the night, easily.
Thank you.
Because he had 10 threes or something going into the
He had 11, I think, for the game. He had 7 in the first quarter.
He had 10 threes going into the fourth quarter, and he was on pace to do something really pretty crazy. And it was the most impressive performance of the night, but I think when you don't play defense, I don't think you can be considered that amazing of a player, that type of spectacle, because you look, basketball is a full game. Defense is so undervalued in today's game, and it's so disappointing. Scotty, you're on the clock.
Guys, we just finished recruiting season, and the Colorado Buffalo once again did not finish in the top 75 in ESPN Insider. And, you know, this kind of gets me bothered because there's a lot of Colorado fans that I'm friends with, and they post on social media, oh, this is our season, and it really makes me angry because every single time they say next season's our season, they rattle off 4 wins, 5 wins, 4 wins. I want it to end. I want Colorado fans to just stop talking until they actually do something because Colorado has been a terrible football program for the past decade. Their last win came against Houston in 2004. Colorado is not relevant, and Colorado fans should understand that. Colorado is a bad football program.
You know, I totally agree. I think Colorado is so irrelevant, and I think it's hilarious. The former big rival of Big Red before apparently Iowa took their place. I don't think so, but no, Colorado was great in the 90s. Had a Heisman winner that I can't put my finger on, but Colorado is just not relevant. They don't have a coach. They don't have the recruiting base. 75th in recruiting isn't going to get you past 4 wins, especially in the loaded Pac-12, and it's really, I want to say it's sad to see, but if I see a Colorado fan, I will laugh in their face.
Basically, and honestly, I didn't even know. I totally forgot that Colorado even had a football team. I mean, they haven't been relevant in memory. I think the only thing worth noting that Colorado's even done as a state in the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years is legalize cannabis. Other than that, I don't know what they do anymore because they certainly aren't practicing football.
Well, I mean, Denver is in the Super Bowl.
Well, I mean, college, Scotty.
Oh, okay,
college, Scotty. I'm not. No. I wouldn't disrespect your Broncos like that. And Matt, you're on the clock.
All right, Tyronn Lue took over the Cavaliers coaching job a few games ago, and he has really revamped this offense. Kevin Love is getting better elbow touches, getting more touches where he needs them. Kevin Love is not out of position like he was under David Blatt. He's not standing there on offense, and he looks at least alive on defense. We know Kevin Love's not a great defender. We know he's never going to be a great defender, but he's engaged in the offense. He's running around like a real athlete does, and LeBron can find him where he needs to find him, and he's so much of a bigger component of this team when he's getting those elbow touches because he has a great mid-range game, and he can knock down those shots when he needs to.
And, you know, I think we're starting to understand why David Blatt was not meant to coach the Cleveland Cavaliers because Tyronn Lue, Cleveland just looks like a different basketball team right now. They are fun to watch, and something tells me Tyronn Lue could coach this team to an Eastern Conference championship. They have the talent, and right now he has impressed me with what he's been able to do with this team.
Absolutely, and when we first broke the news here on the Spill Sports Show that David Blatt had been fired, I was freaking out. I couldn't believe it, but I'll tell you what, Tyronn Lue has been outstanding. They're getting more possessions per game. They are running up and down the floor. They're running a real offense. And I know they got I know they got killed by the Warriors. I understand that. But if this team keeps improving with like they've been doing last couple weeks, Cleveland's slowly moving in to be my favorite to win the title this year. I don't see why they can't, assuming the whole team stays healthy. I think they can beat the Warriors in a 7-game series.
Quick roundtable, one word, your pick for the Super Bowl. Scott?
I get one word?
Yes.
Broncos.
Dabcos. I can't pick. That is all the time we have for today, folks. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. Be sure to tune in next week for another edition of the Spill Sports Show. Same time, Friday from 1 to 3. Until then, enjoy your weekend, and
Go
Big
Hawkeyes.
Red. Oh, no. We're ending the show. Go Big Red.
Go Big Red.
3, 2, 1. Dab!
Big Red.
Dab on him.
The Spill Sports Show with Matt Reynoldson, David Eickholt, and Scott Ayers. Never miss a show again. Check out our podcast at thespillkrnu.wordpress.com.
The 76ers could have drastically improved their organization by drafting Walter Pitchford.
Quite frankly, if he wins a Super Bowl, I'll direct it 30 for 30 on it.
I've watched this kid play multiple times on national television.
You like watching kids, David?
Dude, I love basketball. Excuse me.
The Spill Sports Show, every Friday from 1 to 3 on KRNU2.